In the middle of the sea, some people in a ship were making an offering to the ruler of the sea fog strait, Stokel. The peculiar thing about that offering is that 2 women were the sacrifice, and the people in the ship hoped that it was enough so that the ruler would protect them. However, the 2 women were not in a hurry to jump to their deaths, and that pissed off the pirates on board, who were also growing impatient. They look like pirates, behave like pirates, and speak like pirates, so I am assuming they are pirates. On the other hand, one of the women, a brown-haired young lady, was truly scared, wondering if she was really going to die like that. After all, she had only boarded that ship to meet her fiancé. In the end, she didn't even know how things had gotten to that point. However, the other woman, a blonde young lady, was also growing impatient and asked the first one if she could hurry up. Nevertheless, before the brown-haired lady could even reply, the blind one kicked her on the back and threw her into the sea, which of course left the other dumbfounded. Even the men on board were flabbergasted, especially by the nonchalant demeanor of the blonde girl after kicking the other into the sea. She was behaving as if she were on a cruise, enjoying a wonderful vacation. And if that were not enough, she then said that she would leave too, and almost immediately she made a dive so perfect that the judges on the ship had no choice but to give her a perfect score. In fact, the score was beyond perfection, since it was 100 instead of the usual 10. Of course, they all thought that the blonde girl was crazy, but they also admitted that her dive had been perfect. In the meantime, the brown-haired lady was sinking deeper and deeper while wondering if she was really going to die like that, and why that woman had kicked her. At that moment, she began to feel desperate, as she couldn't breathe, but luckily, the blonde woman appeared and created an air bubble around the other lady's head, allowing her to breathe normally. Still, the brown-haired lady began to fall unconscious, yet she managed to notice a trident tattoo on the back of the blonde woman's neck and wondered if the other was a siren. Sometime later, the brown-haired lady woke up in what appeared to be a warship. Right after, she took a look around and saw some people she guessed were sailors. Still, before she could keep looking, the blonde woman interrupted her analysis by complaining to another person who was apparently looking down on the stewardesses. That shocked the brown-haired lady, but the blonde woman, whose name was Sella Cardi, didn't notice it and kept complaining, saying that even stewardesses could swim well, before adding that in case of a marine accident, it was their duty to save passengers. Right after, the person she was talking to, a young man wearing glasses, asked Sella if she had saved the brown-haired lady because she had felt a sense of duty, to which she quickly replied, while laughing, that she had done it for money. The young man then sighed and told her that her reason was an awfully practical one, but she explained that if word of her heroics got back to the company, she could get promoted and her weekly pay would rise. The young man didn't buy her story and even told her that there were a lot of suspicions about her. However, since she was a stewardess, he would let that slide. Still, he immediately asked her about her outfit, and she took off the towels she was using to cover it to explain that she was wearing a diving suit. The young man immediately got embarrassed after watching her wear that hot outfit and asked her to put the towel on. Nevertheless, she ignored his request and explained that she had picked up a torn sail abandoned at the harbor and had sewn it together herself. She even added that the diving suit was waterproof, so it kept her body heat in. However, the downside was that it was stiff and tight, and that it was potentially dangerous to the hearts of young men. The young man then asked her to change clothes first, before adding that he would return her belongings later. She immediately thanked him while calling him Sailor Glasses, and when he was about to tell her his name, the brown-haired lady sneezed, which caught the attention of the other 2. Right after, Sella went to meet with the brown-haired lady, who wondered what to do. In fact, she was so absorbed thinking of it that when Sella greeted her, she panicked. Still, Sella remained with her happy expression, and after introducing herself, she told her that she would be in the other's care from that moment onward, while wondering why the other girl was so scared and if she had done something wrong. Apparently, Sella, for some good reason, needed to win Maria's, that was the name of the brown-haired lady, trust. The thing was that Sella knew that Maria was the protagonist of the novel, The Duchess Who Fled to the Sea. Sella's job was a stewardess on a passenger ship, and originally, she was just an extra fated to die young in the novel, but since she was desperate to survive, she had clung to saving the noble heroine, Lady Maria Rodnelli, who stood before her at that moment. Ever since our protagonist had possessed Sella's body 3 weeks before, she had been carefully plotting to deliberately get captured by pirates, to throw Maria into the sea before she was shot, and to flee with her to land. And she had succeeded in breaking the original story. 2 things. 1, I was right. Those men were pirates. 2, I truly thought Maria was the protagonist of this story. Nice one, Author San. Sella's plan went like this. Save the heroine Maria from death, collect a reward from the filthy rich male lead, escape the clutches of the mastermind behind it all, and buy a house with a blue roof, white walls, and a little dock, with a small sailboat with a triangular mast right out front. Well, she really knows what she wants. Afterward, she would live in a seaside home where she could see the ocean, and until the novel ends, she would stay tucked away there. Just imagining her future, leisurely life by the sea thrilled our protagonist. Since she was a child, she always loved the sea's beauty. Moreover, the ocean, full of mysterious creatures, was her only friend. Even when she lost her parents in an accident on her 15th birthday, the sea was what held her up. She learned scuba diving to explore deeper waters, enrolled in Marine University to learn more about the ocean's ecosystem, and saved money diligently, dreaming of going to the Mediterranean. Sadly, she ended up dying in a traffic accident, just like that. Nevertheless, in that new world, she could finally fulfill that dream. Back to reality, Sela told Maria that when she fell into the sea, she was nearly unconscious. Right after, Maria asked if breathing inside that bubble of air had been just a dream. After all, she could swear that she had seen something like a siren from a fairy tale. At that moment, Sela recalled that once a certain man learned that Maria was a noblewoman, he demanded repayment for saving her, with interest piled on top, several times over, which was why our protagonist believed that he was a true villain through and through. In fact, because of that, Maria's life became difficult. Nevertheless, she also recalled that someone called Elime was lenient toward commoners in distress. So, if you pretended to be lower class, you wouldn't get tangled up with him. Right after, she told Maria that the man always exacted payment for any help given, before adding that he was harsher with nobles. After hearing that, Maria cut her off while thanking her for her concern. The noblewoman then added that she intended to reveal her true identity. She didn't know what demands the admiral might make afterward, but he was the one who had ensured that she boarded that warship safely, which was why she wanted to repay him however she could. That didn't please Sela at all, but the blonde woman still admitted that the other's behavior was exactly what she had expected from Maria. After all, she was a lofty, pure-blood noble who chose to go through a political marriage just for her family's sake. In short, she was selfless, upright, and noble of character, which was why our protagonist liked her. However, that was not helping at that moment. So Sela thought that she needed to break Maria's stubbornness. Right after, she warned Maria that the admiral might demand an enormous sum, but the other simply replied that she still had her dowry and that she could use part of it. Still, Sela didn't admit defeat and asked Maria what would happen if the admiral demanded her life, which finally broke the other's composure. Our protagonist then explained that even though she had hidden Maria's identity to protect her, under naval law, false testimony was a serious crime. And to make her argument stronger, Sela didn't wait for the other's reply and simply told her that she was going to accept her fate, before informing her that she was going to sleep and asking her to wake her up when the guillotine was ready. To someone like Maria, that was a huge blow. But Sela didn't stop there. Right after, our protagonist complained, saying that she had risked her life to save someone, but she wouldn't even get to enjoy a bit of luxury in return, which was why she simply cursed her fate and waited for her execution. At that moment, Maria couldn't take anymore and yelled that Sela shouldn't die. However, the blonde woman ignored that and asked the noblewoman if she wanted to hear her will. And again, without waiting for a response, she said that if she died, she wanted to be buried by the sea. Right after, Sela explained that since she had no parents, no one would go visit her, so there was no need for a gravestone. Still, she asked Maria that if she ever had children, she would tell them about our blonde drama queen. She wanted Maria to tell them that a kind stewardess had once died saving their mother, a stewardess whose dream was to live at a seaside resort. Sadly, due to their mother, that kind stewardess had died without fulfilling it, although she finally could fulfill it in heaven. Wow, this girl has talent. She could write some very popular K-dramas for Netflix. In the end, Maria ended up complying, especially due to the expression Sela was showing. The stewardess truly looked like a disturbed person. That was way more than the noblewoman could handle. Afterward, Maria grabbed Sela's hands and asked her to tell her more details about her dream, because she wanted to help her achieve it. As for our protagonist, she really couldn't believe that all that show had worked. Meanwhile, the admiral in question, Elime Siren, was reading some documents in his office when Russell, the young man wearing glasses who had been talking to Sela before, knocked on the door. Elime told the other to enter, and once Russell did, he asked the admiral to turn on the lights since it was too dark in there. After hearing the request from his aide, Admiral Elime said that he was just resting his eyes, but Russell didn't believe it and asked Elime if he was reading a certain letter again. However, the admiral ignored the question and asked his aide to give him the report. The aide then clicked his tongue and complied on the condition that the admiral had to rest afterward. Russell then reported that the pirate ship sank under their assault. There were no survivors among the pirates, and only 2 women lived. Moreover, one of them was wearing a diving suit. That last part caught the admiral's attention. In fact, Elime quickly asked what a diving suit was, but Russell couldn't reply since he was too busy looking and feeling embarrassed while recalling the moment she saw Sela wearing it. The admiral noticed it and told his aide that his expression was disgusting, which bothered Russell. However, Elime didn't let that matter go and asked the other why he looked like that when the diving suit was mentioned. The aide then regained his composure and replied that Sela had said that it was a special suit that was suitable for wearing underwater. The admiral then asked where you could buy something like that, and the other replied that Sela claimed that she hadn't bought it, but made it herself from discarded sales. That confused Elime more, since he didn't understand why a stewardess would make something like that. In fact, He asked his aide if he was sure his investigation had been done properly, to which Russell replied that he had investigated the matter. But the problem was that the woman's answers were too bizarre. However, in the end, Russell admitted that he had fallen short and told the admiral that he would reinvestigate. Nevertheless, Elaim refused and said that he would look into it himself and asked him to fill him in on the details as they moved. Russell then explained that, according to the reports, the suspicious woman carried an unconscious castaway on her back and swam several hundred meters. Even a well-trained naval soldier would struggle with that. After hearing that, Elaime asked if Sella was really just a waitress on a passenger ship, to which the other replied that our protagonist claimed that. However, before Russell could elaborate on the matter, another officer interrupted them to report that the stickle had appeared, which alarmed the admiral and his aide. Apparently, a fishing boat near the stickle had been attacked, and only one fisherman had barely survived. Unfortunately, that man was in danger because the boat was sinking. The last known location of the stickle was longitude 129 degrees 30 minutes, latitude 25 degrees 10 minutes. However, it had currently vanished into the deep sea. After hearing that, the admiral guessed that the bastard was trying to escape through the underwater canyon, and Russell asked Elaim what his orders were. The admiral then said that, since it could get away while they prepared the lifeboats, to pursue it, they would have to abandon the fishermen and move immediately. After hearing that, Russell said that they couldn't just leave the fishermen to die, and the admiral thought that he had to make a choice. Meanwhile, Sella and Maria noticed the commotion, and the blonde woman said that it was unusually noisy outside, while Maria wondered out loud what was happening. Almost immediately, they heard someone yelling that a fisherman had fallen into the sea, which shocked them. Right after, they also heard some people saying that it would take 20 minutes to launch the lifeboat, and that the admiral's orders were to capture the stickle. After hearing that, our protagonist was alarmed because she knew that 20 minutes was just too much. After all, even a short time in the water could be fatal, especially when adding to the mixture the rough waves she could see through the cabin's porthole. She then wondered why everyone was hesitating in the middle of an emergency and decided that if the Navy wouldn't act, then she would save him. Almost immediately, she began to run, and Maria quickly called her. However, our protagonist ignored it, since she couldn't just stand by and watch. Shortly after, she jumped into the water, and the sailors who noticed it said that she was insane. Meanwhile, Sella began to look for the fisherman frenetically until she finally found him sinking deeper and deeper. She then swam toward the man while casting an air bubble that she called oxygen tank. She introduced her head inside the bubble, and right after, she made a pair of flippers appear on her feet to swim faster and better, while thinking that what she was doing should be the reason she had awakened her magic. 2 months prior, she had been reincarnated into a novel, and while struggling to adapt to that strange new world, she had been swept away by a storm and thrown into the sea. Her will to live slowly faded in the freezing water, but then she met a siren, radiant as the sun, and her forgotten memories of a past life returned. The brilliant dream of living with the ocean she loved the most, her past life, which ended in vain despite her dream, and her current life, which felt empty because she had forgotten that dream. All of it had become lingering regrets, fueling her determination to survive and fulfill her dream at any cost. So when she thought about what she needed to survive, she awakened the magic she currently possessed. Back to the present, she cast another air bubble around the man's head while thinking that he needed to hold on a little longer. Right after, she grabbed the man and began to swim upward to the surface of the water. Meanwhile, the admiral ordered his troops that if the stickle showed signs of targeting the waitress, they should attack and rescue both the fisherman and the waitress at once. He then ordered them to lower the boats. Shortly after, while standing on one of the boats, he noticed something and wondered why he was sensing a magical energy from under the sea and why it was the same kind of magic he used. Then he noticed that the energy was getting closer and wondered what on earth was happening. Does he know that he is not on planet Earth? Almost immediately, Sel emerged from the sea with the fishermen, and the people on the boats noticed it. In fact, they were amazed by it, especially because the fisherman was breathing and quickly called her a hero. As for Elame, he helped them to get on the boat where he was, and when he grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her, he noticed a light that surrounded her, which astonished him. She noticed his reaction and was confused since she didn't know what had caused it. On the other hand, Elame thought that as soon as he touched her, the pounding in his head started to clear. Right after, he wondered how she could use the same magic as him. However, at that moment, his thoughts were interrupted because she passed out. Sometime later, she finally woke up on a bed while thinking that she was drowsy, her eyes felt heavy, and that the whole place was very bright. She then asked out loud where she was, and the admiral in person replied that she was in the infirmary, before adding that she had been unconscious for 2 days, which surprised her. Sella then thought that she had really pushed herself and had drained all her stamina by using her powers back to back. Still, she noticed that the voice of the person who was talking to her was really nice, even though she didn't know who he was. Right after, Elime pulled her out of her reverie by telling her that, even though the fisherman had already woken up, she had stayed asleep. He also told her that the military doctor had diagnosed her with severe fatigue and hypothermia. After hearing that, she expressed disbelief while wondering if she had truly been carried there by that decadent-looking man she had glimpsed on the boat. Right after, the admiral asked her why she had saved the fisherman, to which she replied that she had done it because she just wanted to, before adding that she had a special power that made it possible. Sella then explained that if she had looked away and let the fisherman die, the guilt would have haunted her for the rest of her life. At that moment, she realized that she couldn't see the face of the man who was talking to her because it was hidden behind a curtain, and she began to wonder who he was. Again, the man pulled her out of her reverie by asking her what she was going to do once she disembarked from the ship, and she replied that she would return to the passenger ship, while whispering that she needed to get a promotion too. Alima then asked her if there was a reason she worked on a passenger ship, and she replied that she did it so she could see the ocean often. The admiral then told her that she could do that by just working near a port, to which she replied that he didn't understand, before adding that the clear, untouched sea you could only find far offshore was the best. She then thought that the voice of the man was so pleasant that she couldn't help but keep the conversation going, and right after, she noticed that she was getting sleepy again. Shortly after, the admiral told her that she loved the sea and had good judgment and courage. In fact, he believed that she was too capable to just work on a passenger ship. So, he wanted to hire her and wanted to know her opinion about that. After hearing that, she asked him if he meant that she would work for the Siren Navy, but before he could reply, she directly refused, saying that soldiers were underpaid and lacked freedom. In the end, she hated the thought of enlisting. Immediately thereafter, she fell asleep, which surprised the admiral, especially since he was about to tell her to think it over. He then began to caress her face while saying that she was truly a strange woman, strange enough that she wanted to keep her by his side and learn more about her. Okay, that didn't sound weird, right? 3 days later, at Herbert Port, various soldiers were saying goodbye to our protagonist. They were very happy, trying to catch her attention with sweet words. As for Sella, she felt a little overwhelmed and admitted that she was feeling a huge pressure. After all, because she had saved 2 people, the sailors were treating her like a hero. Even Maria was behaving like a fangirl. However, before she could disembark, Russell appeared and told her that she should wait since there was something urgent he needed to tell her. That put our protagonist on alert, since she began to suspect that they might have found Maria's identity. Immediately thereafter, Sella stood between Russell and Maria and asked the young man what it was. Right after, he introduced himself as Russell Parker, since she kept calling him Sailor Glasses, and then he gave her a letter and a knife while saying that it was travel money, as thanks for saving Maria and the fisherman. Regarding the knife, he said that it was the one he had promised to return once she reached port. After hearing that, our protagonist thought that even though having travel money was nice, she didn't like that feeling and decided that it was better to get out of there quickly. She then thanked him and told him that she would never forget the kindness of the Navy. Right after, he said goodbye to him. Nevertheless, that confused Russell, who quickly asked her why she was in such a hurry, before adding that there was something else he should tell her, which confirmed our protagonist's previous bad feeling. Shen then asked him what it was before whispering that he was making her nervous. Immediately thereafter, he told her that the admiral had offered her employment. That surprised her, and she wondered why the admiral was showing up there. However, she quickly joined the dots and guessed that the man with the smooth voice from the infirmary might be him, so she asked Russell if the admiral had ever gone to the infirmary to see her, which the other quickly confirmed. The aide then explained that Alime had rescued countless castaways, but it had been the first time he himself had visited the infirmary, which deeply shocked her since she realized that she had ended up entangled with Alime, which was bound to ruin her peaceful life at sea. Our protagonist knew that she needed to cut that tie at that very moment, so she immediately refused the scout offer. However, the aide didn't back down and asked her to reconsider. He even told her that if commuting worried her, they could provide lodging, before adding that the weekly pay was far more than what she was currently making. Nevertheless, Sella didn't change her mind and told him that even though she was grateful, she didn't want that job, so she hoped he could tell the admiral that she had declined the offer. However, the aide still insisted and asked her to wait. Still, she refused again and told him, while smiling widely, that she owed them all a great debt. She then wished for the blessing of Okeanos to be with the Siren Navy. At that moment, Russell finally backed down and told her that if she changed her mind, she should go find them, before adding that they would be stationed at Herbert Port for a week. That made her feel uncomfortable since she had already said no, but she decided to keep quiet about it while wondering if she really looked that valuable. A person with superb skills to dive and is capable of using magic. Sure, I wonder if she is truly valuable. I am being sarcastic, by the way. Nevertheless, she then thought of another possibility and began to consider that they might have noticed her using magic. Sometime later, at the Herbert Ducal estate, our protagonist felt elated because she had finally arrived at the estate of Duke Herbert. She then thought that once she collected her reward from the Duke, she would finally be free. However, she didn't fail to notice that Maria was acting weird and quickly asked her if something was troubling her. The noblewoman then replied that because of her disappearance, she hadn't been able to prepare properly for the wedding, so she had brought great dishonor to both her family and the Herbert family. She knew that the Duke and her parents should have been very worried about her. Maria, who always put others first and never showed, was opening up to our protagonist at that moment and was telling her about her worries. Our protagonist then began to consider the romance elements in the story. Duke Herbert was the male lead of the novel and Elim's rival in the shadows. Maria and the Duke fell in love at first sight, yet neither realized the other's true feelings. Maria believed that a Duke could never love someone like her, who had nothing but her bloodline. On the other hand, the Duke believed that Lady Rodnelli wouldn't want a man like him, tainted with common blood. Both mistaking their love as one-sided, they eventually ended up in an unhappy marriage, and thanks to Elimi, the misunderstanding deepened even further. So, at that moment, Sela decided that before that turned into a slog, she needed to intervene. Sela then asked Maria if she was worried about what the Duke thought of her, which caught the other by surprise, since she couldn't understand how our protagonist knew about it. Sela then explained that she could just tell, before advising the noblewoman, that instead of fretting, they should make a little bet. That confused Maria, so Sela explained that Maria bet that the Duke disliked her, while our protagonist bet that he still loved Maria. That confused the young lady, but Sela ignored the other's reaction and told her that whoever lost got a forehead flick from the winner, which confused Maria even more, since she didn't know what a forehead flick was. In the end, more than anything, our protagonist just wanted the heroine she had saved to live happily. At that moment, they were interrupted by an exhausted and worried young man who arrived in the hall after running for a while. The man in question was Duke Herbert, and Maria was completely astonished after seeing him. He then smiled at Maria while blushing and told her that she was safe. Wow, he even stuttered. How dense you could possibly be to being able to ignore those signs of affection? Almost immediately, Maria apologized for having him worried. They then got very close, as if they were about to kiss, and our protagonist thought that she was the winner there, without question. After all, the bridge she had built was very good. It was so good that she began to realize that it was beginning to become an issue. Sometime later, Sela was explaining to the Duke that she wanted to buy a secluded house in Matlana, which our protagonist confirmed while feeling elated. After all, that place had the Mediterranean-style seaside of her dreams. At that moment, the Duke asked her why Matlana of all places, to which she replied that the sea there was crystal clear. However, the Duke reminded her that living alone without a family was dangerous. Still, she replied that the sea made it safe enough. After hearing that, the Duke sighed while touching his head and asked her if she liked the sea that much, to which she happily replied that she loved it. The Duke then wondered if it was really wise to keep that mania close. At that moment, Maria interrupted his thoughts by pulling his sleeve, which made them both blush. The noblewoman then told him that Sela had saved her, which was why she also wanted to help her dream come true. That made him realize that without that sea-crazed lunatic, Lady Rodnelli wouldn't have made it out alive either. The Duke then told Sela that he would support her so she could buy her house under the condition that she kept everything that had happened with Lady Rodnelli secret, since she would soon be his wife. He then explained that if word spread that she was captured by pirates, gossip would surely seize on it, and he didn't want her becoming fodder for their slander. Almost immediately, our protagonist replied that, for her sake, she would keep the secret. Immediately thereafter, he gave our protagonist an envelope while saying that inside was enough money to buy a house of his own and then some. However, before he could finish explaining, her intense reaction cut him off. Sela was totally elated while thanking him for his help. Her eyes were literally sparkling, and the Duke couldn't help but think that she was really a lunatic. On the other hand, Maria was entering fangirl mode. Nah, she has not left that mode since the ship. Shortly after, Maria took Sela away and told her that she kept being in her debt, before apologizing. However, our protagonist quickly replied that it was fine before adding that she didn't mind at all. Still, Lady Rodnelli told Sela that she would like to give her a gift, even though it was not much. That caught Sela off guard, and she asked Maria what kind of gift she wanted to give her, to which the other replied that it was a blue diamond. Our protagonist took the diamond in her hands, thinking it was like a wedding gift, and wondering if she could even accept it. She was truly in a predicament because, on the one hand, she believed it would not be right to accept, but on the other hand, to fulfill her dream, accepting it was a must. In the end, she decided to take it, thinking of it as a work bonus. Right after, she smiled at Sela and told her that she would gladly put it to good use, to which Maria replied that she hoped our protagonist used it well to make her dream come true. At that moment, Sela thought that somehow she felt closer to Maria, almost like she had become a lucky fan who had met their idol. Meanwhile, the Admiral kept thinking about Sela Cardi, a woman who could use magic like him, loved the sea, and was brave and sharp-judged. Elime just wanted to know who she really was. Suddenly, while thinking about it, he began to nosebleed, which made him curse. Sadly, almost immediately, he ended up passing out and falling to the floor. Shortly after, Russell entered the Admiral's office after hearing the noise and was astonished after seeing the other lying on the floor. Immediately thereafter, the aide called the soldiers and told them to get the Admiral to the infirmary. Sometime later, Russell told the Admiral that he was feeling unwell, before asking if he really needed to hear the report at that moment. Elime then replied that if he rested a little, he would recover, before adding that the other should stop fussing and keep going. After hearing that, the aide got mad and yelled at the Admiral that he had already gone more than half a year without the convalescence he was supposed to take, before adding that if Elime delayed any longer, it would truly be dangerous. That began to piss the Admiral off, and Elime warned Russell against making him repeat himself, and the aide finally complied. Russell then said that Lady Sella's family was the fallen house of Count Cardi, which had collapsed 20 years prior after her grandfather squandered their fortune through gambling and crime. She was orphaned at an early age and grew up under a nasty uncle. Not only did her uncle seize the remaining family estate, but he also exploited Lady Sella's wages for his illegal ventures. In the end, while the uncle resided in an upscale district among the upper class, Lady Sella lived in a garret near the harbor slums. After hearing that, Elime said that he would have to rehire her on the condition of providing a safe, decent room. At that moment, Russell asked permission to ask a question, and once the Admiral permitted it, the aide asked why Elime was so intent on employing Lady Sella, before asking if it was because she could use magic like him. The Admiral quickly confirmed it, before adding that in times like those, when so few could wield magic, it would be troublesome if their powers became known, because those in power would try to steal their magic or kill them. That was the reason he couldn't overlook her. In short, keeping her close allowed Elime to both watch over and protect her. After hearing that, Russell understood the Admiral's reasons and told him that there was one more matter he should report. The aide then informed Elime that the castaway whom Lady Sella had rescued turned out to be Duke Herbert's fiancée. Besides, in gratitude, the Duke had rewarded our protagonist quite generously. After hearing that, Elime sighed and said that it was amusing, before adding that if they had known the castaway was the Duke's betrothed, it could have helped them resolve that troublesome territorial waters dispute with him. Right after, Elime's expression changed into a dark one, and he said that their loss should be compensated by Sella Cardi herself. In fact, he ordered Russell to see that our protagonist was summoned there. Meanwhile, Sella finished packing up and thought that she just had to leave. In her opinion, staying where she was at that moment was suffocating, but first, she needed to pay the week's overdue rent. However, when she was about to leave, a very angry bald man yelled at her, asking where she thought she was going, before telling her that she had to pay the rent. He then began to insult her, thinking she was trying to run. After all, she was a whole week late. Okay, I won't repeat his insults. Let's just say they were pretty harsh. Sella was caught off guard by the landlord's arrival, but she then got mad because he was a lunatic who was always spitting abuse like that. In her opinion, he was a worthless piece of trash. At that moment, her thoughts were interrupted by the man, who suddenly tried to hit her with his frying pan because he thought Sella was looking down on him. Luckily, he missed when he threw the frying pan at her, but that didn't stop him from continuing to insult her. He even insinuated that she was wearing expensive clothes despite being an orphan because she had seduced some rich bastard. As for our protagonist, she just couldn't believe that she had almost gotten seriously hurt over a bit of rent. She then began to wonder if the problem was the slum or the landlord. Nevertheless, what she did know was that she wouldn't endure it anymore. Immediately thereafter, she kicked the bald man hard in the belly. Then, she asked him how much deposit was left, and when he remained silent, she asked him why he wasn't answering. Right after, while showing a menacing expression, she took a teapot that had fallen to the floor and asked him again how much deposit was left, which scared the bald man. Sella then asked him if he was going to answer properly or not, and the landlord then replied that it was 10 pounds. Right after, she did the math and paid him, while some people who were watching the scene thought that the landlord was trying to bully our protagonist again. Almost immediately, she wanted to confirm with him if the debt was completely settled, and the bald man confirmed it. After hearing that, she suddenly smiled at him and bid him farewell, before mocking him, saying that he had lost all his hair because he was living so vilely. At that moment, she thought that it felt like all the bitterness had finally washed away. Moreover, she believed that from that moment onward, the landlord would be too humiliated to mess with other tenants, at least for a while. She then decided that it was time to head to the hotel before the following day's voyage to Matlana. However, her attention was suddenly caught by the statue of a siren, a beautiful being with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish. That made Sella happy because she had always loved sirens, but sadly, an old lady arrived and told her that the shop was closed for the day, to which our protagonist replied that she was just looking. The old lady then apologized, but then she tripped and was about to fall. Luckily, our protagonist not only stopped the old woman from falling, but she also grabbed a bottle that was about to fall to the floor. The old lady then thanked Sella before asking our protagonist if she liked sirens, since she had noticed her watching so fondly through the glass. Sella then smiled widely at the grandma and told her that sirens were her favorite, after whales. She then explained that in old times, sailors believed that seeing a siren meant a day of good fortune. However, they said sirens were extinct at that moment, but still, our protagonist believed that perhaps, somewhere in the deep sea, they still lived and breathed. At least, she really hoped so. The granny then gave Sella a necklace and told her that if she carried the emblem of a siren, good luck would find her, just like in the old days. That shocked our protagonist, who immediately asked the grandma if she really could accept it. The granny then replied that she could consider it as thanks for her help earlier. Sella quickly thanked the grandma while thinking that, somehow, it really felt like something good would happen. The following day, heavy rain began, and Sella wondered if luck was really going her way. After all, with all that rain, she wasn't sure if the ferry would even depart that day. In fact, she was beginning to think that it would absolutely not sail. Our protagonist then thought that she hadn't considered the possibility that the weather was the obstacle. Still, she was aware that it couldn't be helped and decided to treat herself for all the hard work with a nice meal that would cheer her up. Sometime later, Sella was surprised after seeing a lot of people in the dining hall, but she then explained it because a famous soprano was performing. Afterward, she began to feel gloomy because everyone was there with their spouse or lover. After all, they said the upper class paired off at banquets like that. Then, Sella decided to stop feeling sad and told herself that she could have an amazing time all on her own. Almost immediately, the soprano began her performance, and the singer quickly captivated our protagonist, who thought that the artist was incredible and beautiful. In fact, Sella thought that it almost made up for not being able to leave from Atlanta right away. At that moment, the Admiral interrupted her thoughts by saying that it was astounding that they were staying at the same hotel. Our protagonist then turned around to see who was talking to her, while thinking that he had such a wonderful voice, and the man asked her if he might join her there. Sella looked at the handsome man, who was taking a seat beside her, and wondered who he was and if he knew her. Shortly after, our protagonist began to wonder why he was not saying anything after asking her to join her. Moreover, she couldn't help but think that his face and voice felt very familiar. However, she believed that if she had seen him before, she would never forget a face like that. After all, he was more handsome than most celebrities from her past life. Still, she kept getting a sense of déjà vu. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore and asked him if they had met somewhere before, to which he quickly replied that if they were counting, that would be the third time, which left her flabbergasted. He then explained that the first one had been on the rescue boat, and the second one had been in the infirmary. After hearing that, she immediately recalled Russell's words about the fact that it had been the first time the Admiral had ever gone to the infirmary. It was then that she finally joined the dots and realized that the man in front of her was the villain from the novel, Elim. Right after, he interrupted her thoughts by saying that he had heard that she had stopped by Duke Herbert's mansion. He then asked her if she had conspired with his fiancée to deceive him, which made our protagonist go on full alert mode. She immediately stood up while thinking that the Admiral had found out everything about Maria, and Elime's next words confirmed it. He told her that thanks to her hiding the Duke's fiancé so well, he had suffered a great loss. Those words surprised her, and she thought that if she hadn't hidden Maria's identity, Elime would have taken her hostage just like in the novel, blackmailed Duke Herbert, and gained the upper hand in the territorial waters dispute. Of course, she was aware that due to her intervention, the situation had changed a little, but calling that a loss was too much in her opinion, which confirmed that Elime had a classic villain personality. Furthermore, she also realized that with a personality like that, there was no way he would let the person who had caused him that loss get away with it. At that moment, she began to wonder if she should try to run away from him. He then interrupted her thoughts again by asking her what would happen if he let that go, and before she could reply, he added that he would like to make her a proposal, which shocked her. She immediately thought that she truly didn't want to get any more involved with Elime and didn't want to hear his proposal. Sadly, she knew that if she didn't listen to his proposal, he would just keep chasing her down and tormenting her, which in turn would make his happy Matlana plan all go up in smoke. So she decided that she should at least hear what the proposal was first and then decide what to do, because just running away wouldn't solve anything. After all, she didn't believe the proposal was related to what Russell had told her before about hiring her. Sella then asked him what he wanted to propose to her, and shortly after, he replied that the Siren family would hire her. After hearing that, our protagonist thought that, in the end, it was about hiring her. She then thought that if she accepted his offer, she would have to board a warship or go to the duchy, and if that happened, she wouldn't be able to live in Matlana. She then asked him why on earth he was so intent on hiring her, to which he replied that he couldn't answer that question in that place. At that moment, he noticed that some people were whispering about him and the woman who was with him. She apparently noticed that too, and asked him what he meant by working somewhere close instead. He then replied that it meant exactly what it sounded like. She just had to be where he could see her while doing whatever work she wanted. Okay, that somehow sounds very suspicious to me. This dude definitely needs to work on his social skills. After hearing that, she wondered why that guy was so persistent and almost immediately asked him with an arrogant demeanor what would happen if she wanted to be a seam bum, which confused him since he didn't understand the meaning of the word bum. Right after, she explained that it meant a loafer who did nothing but play and eat. After all, her dream was to live a carefree life like that by the sea, just lying around by the water like a seal, patting her belly while still collecting her weekly pay. She then asked him if that would be fine with him. Once she said that, she wondered what he would do after realizing that she was a total deadbeat. What she didn't expect was that he would agree to it almost instantly. She even wondered if he was in full possession of his mental faculties. After all, he looked unwell because he was sick. At that moment, Elime's expression turned playful, and he said that it was the first time he had ever hired a sea seal, which would be very interesting. Those words somehow pissed her off, and she quickly clarified that it was not a sea seal, but a sea bum. She then thought that, at that rate, that conversation would go on forever, and told him that if it was hard to explain in detail because there were too many people in there, she would get closer to him so he could tell her at least a little of the reason he wanted to hire her. He took a little while to reflect on the matter and told her that when he was with her, the pain eased. Besides, he believed that she smelled like lemons. That confused her, and she asked him if she smelled sour, which embarrassed him since she had misunderstood his words. At that moment, a waitress appeared to serve the cheesecake she had ordered. Elime then asked her if she liked cheesecake, and she replied that it was delicious. Right after, he said that it seemed he would have to provide unlimited cheesecake to hire her, which stunned her. She then thought that he was a strange person. Meanwhile, the waitress told another waitress that the admiral was very handsome, to which the other replied by wondering out loud who our protagonist was, before saying that she would go the following time, but she quickly reminded him that she was in charge of table 8. The other waitress then asked to trade shifts, since she really wanted to see the admiral's handsome face closer. Back with our protagonist, the admiral offered her 4 times the weekly pay and lodging provided in a safe area. He really wanted to hire her under those conditions, and he even asked her if there were any other terms she wanted. Nevertheless, she didn't want any of that. What she truly wanted was her freedom. However, she knew that to offer such good conditions, an ulterior motive should be behind his kindness. After all, something she had learned while earning money was that there was no such thing as a free lunch. In fact, easy, comfortable, high-paying jobs were always either illegal or scams. Besides, the reason he was trying so hard to hire her was because of her magic. She was totally convinced about that. So in the worst-case scenario, he might treat her like a lab rat for his magic research, which was why she knew that she should just reject the offer and run. Sela then made clear to him that she had absolutely no intention of working for the Siren family. Still, the admiral remained calm and asked her if there was a particular reason she was refusing his offer, despite the good conditions. She then explained that she preferred being alone, so she didn't want to be tied down working for someone. However, Slime didn't back down and asked her what she would do if she decided to hire her personally. Sela didn't back down either and told him that he was a famous public figure, so he was always surrounded by people, which meant that she would have to refuse that offer too. He immediately tried to refuse her refusal, but at that moment, the pain came back, and he could barely withstand it. That alerted Sela, especially because she noticed a strange sound and tried to determine what it was. However, it didn't sound like it originated inside the banquet hall. Unfortunately, Alima's condition was getting worse, and she quickly asked him how he felt, to which he replied that it had been a gas explosion, which astonished her. The gas engines were fragile and could break from even a small impact, so she wondered if they were affected by the storm outside. Shortly after, a woman began to yell that there was a fire. She also asked for help because there were still people in the boiler room. Sadly, they couldn't get outside because the storm was too strong. Then, things got worse because a wall collapsed due to the explosion of the gas engine, and our protagonist began to panic while wondering what in the world was happening. There were 4 people inside, and the people said that they had to save them, but it didn't look like an easy task. At that moment, the admiral, who was enduring the pain better, said that he would rescue the trapped people before telling everyone to evacuate to the lobby. That impressed Sela because he was going in to rescue them when he didn't look well. After all, he was supposed to be a merciless villain, so she didn't understand why he would go that far to save those people. Then, while others were telling the people that they had to evacuate, Sela realized that Elame wouldn't be able to chase her at that moment. There was a storm outside and a gas explosion inside. So, no one would notice even if she slipped out of the hotel. That was undoubtedly the best time to escape. However, she began to wonder if it was okay to be the only one to run away during a mess like that. After all, even if she succeeded in getting to Metlana, if she read in the newspaper that many people died at the hotel or saw an article saying Elime was seriously injured, she would obviously be filled with self-loathing. She wanted to live with a clear conscience, and she didn't want to leave a stain like that in her perfect plan. So, she decided to hurry and help Elime before it was too late. She then grabbed a fire hose and gave it to a waiter, who quickly thanked her for her help. Right after, she asked if the trapped people had been rescued, to which the young man replied that the admiral had just rescued some. After hearing that, she told him that he should get the injured to the infirmary, but he replied that there was still one person left, before adding that the admiral was also still inside the boiler room. That shocked her, and she wondered if he could endure inside those flames. Someone then asked if the fire hose was operational or not, and Sella realized that it would be weird for the novel's black-hearted mastermind to die there like that, which was why she was sure that he should be alive. Right after, Elimi appeared carrying a young man on his back, and our protagonist couldn't help but feel surprised while seeing him. Still, she immediately regained her composure and asked him if he was okay, to which he replied that he was fine, before adding that they should focus on the injured. Someone then said that they should move the injured against the wall, and another one said that the hose was finally ready, before announcing that they were starting firefighting operations at that moment. While they were doing that, our protagonist thought that it didn't make sense for someone like Elime to jump into the flames to save someone he didn't even know. In fact, she had to admit that, at that moment, he didn't seem like a cold, scheming, black-hearted mastermind at all, but like a completely different person. He then interrupted her thoughts by saying that what they were doing alone wouldn't be enough to put out the fire. Those words surprised Sella, who asked him why he was saying that, to which he replied that the interior was wide and there was only one entrance. Because of that, it was hard to reach deep-seated fires with water sprayed only from the entrance. Sella was baffled after hearing that, but he then added that there was another way and told her that he would appreciate it if she could help him. After hearing his request, Sella thought that, just a moment prior, she was thinking of running away to avoid getting involved further. However, at that moment, she couldn't help but wonder which was Elime's real self. The black-hearted admiral who tormented Maria in the novel, or the Elime who had just saved people while putting his life on the line. Furthermore, she had just realized that she had started wanting to find out for herself. So she took his hand and told him that she would do it just that once. Shortly after, they were outside, and he explained to her that the stables and boiler room were close together. He then added that he would go to the boiler room through a door he was showing her, but she told him that the stables had collapsed, probably due to the storm. Right after, the admiral said that they should move carefully. Suddenly, Sella heard a sound, and in the next instant, they were facing a horse stampede. At that moment, she knew that she had to get out of the way, but due to the strong wind, her body didn't move as she wanted. Luckily, Elime's reflexes worked flawlessly, and he managed to grab her by the hand before jumping away from the horse. However, when he asked her if she was all right, she didn't manage to reply for a while since she was startled. He had ended up hugging her tightly, which made her feel deeply embarrassed to the point of blushing very hard. Wow, that moment had a strong candy vibe. Shortly after, she finally reacted, moved away, and thanked him while stuttering. However, he apparently didn't notice her reaction or the embarrassing situation and simply turned around while telling her to go inside. Still, our protagonist didn't fail to notice that he looked worse and worse and began to wonder if he was going to collapse like that. Sometime later, they arrived at a certain place, and Elime explained that a large tree that was in front of them had fallen, causing the wall of the hotel's boiler room nearby to collapse. He then guessed that the impact should have started the fire. Then, while they were walking toward the boiler room, he suddenly told her that what she was about to see should remain a secret for life. Those words confused her, but before she could say something, he made a huge sphere of water appear by making all the rainwater flow toward him. That surprised Sella, who thought that it was the most beautiful magic she had ever seen in her life. Almost immediately, he shot the sphere toward the wall, which ended up crumbling and revealing the boiler room. After seeing that, Sella thought that if they sprayed water directly there, they could put out the fire. However, at that moment, he began to look worse, and our protagonist quickly asked him if he was fine, before telling him that he was perhaps pushing himself too hard. Moreover, Sella also began to wonder if Elime originally used magic. In fact, so far she knew, nobody in the novel used magic. Right after, she apologized in advance for her bad timing, and then she asked him what kind of magic he had just used. Elime replied that it was incantation magic and added that she probably used it too. Right after, he showed her a tattoo of a trident on the back of his neck and asked her if she had that symbol. That astonished her because it was exactly like the one that appeared on her neck when she used magic. She couldn't help but touch the back of her neck while asking him if that was incantation magic, but he cut her off by saying that explanations could wait because they had to focus on putting out the fire first. Afterward, he cast another spell to throw water on the flames, but he began to cough blood, which made Sella yell at him that he should pull himself together since she had realized that the bleeding wouldn't stop. At first, she believed that he was doing it due to a sense of responsibility as an admiral, but at that moment, she just couldn't understand why he was risking so much danger like that. He was acting like he had nothing to lose. It felt like he would rush straight off a cliff if she just watched. Right after, she asked him to stop and leave the rest to her, before adding that she would call people to finish putting out the fire. She also told him that he should rest. At that moment, she wondered if his magic was leaking out through the holes in his body, which would explain why his body was weakening more and more. It was then that something amazing happened. She was hugging him from behind, and when he touched her hand, he felt something was affecting his magic, and a light began to emanate from him. As for our protagonist, she was dumbfounded after realizing that her magic was being sucked into Elime. Right after, he cast another spell and made a huge whale-shaped energy mass appear, and he then threw it toward the fire. Shortly after, they knew that they could finally catch their breath because the fire in the boiler room was out and they were saved. She then helped him to walk and asked him if he was all right, to which he replied by thanking her for her help. After hearing that, she thought that she hadn't really done much before realizing that the original black-hearted mastermind had just thanked her. After a while, she told him that he should probably go to the hospital first before asking him if he could ride a horse in that state. Nevertheless, he told her to help him reach the guest room since the hospital couldn't fix him. Sometime later, she asked him if they were at the right place because no matter how she looked at it, it was a bathtub. In fact, when he told her that they were at the right place, she immediately asked him if there was medicine in there. However, he couldn't reply because he fell asleep in the bathtub. Still, what shocked the heck out of Sela was not that, but the fact that his lower body turned into the lower body of a fish, which undoubtedly meant that he was a siren. Sela began to contemplate the beautiful fins while wondering if he was really a siren. After all, there was nothing like that in the original novel. They called him a dangerous schemer, but at that moment, she believed that nothing matched the book. Moreover, she also noticed that it looked like he was recovering underwater and began to wonder what she should do. She believed that if she woke up like that, she would be in trouble. Even if Elime was not exactly like the novel described, he was the one who had tried so many tricks to keep her by his side. So, she still believed that to reach her dream, she had to get away from him, so she still considered it better to just run. However, at that moment, her thoughts were interrupted by him, who suddenly woke up and grabbed her hands. Okay, this is becoming a habit for him. Right after, he looked at her with pleading eyes and asked her to stay with him, which shocked her to the point of making her blush. He then pulled her into the bathtub before passing out again, and she ended up inside it with him while looking confused. She didn't completely get that he had passed out just like that. Furthermore, she felt like her chest was going to explode, not to mention that his hand was gripping so tightly that she couldn't pull away. Right after, she began to tell herself to calm down while wondering out loud why he had asked her not to go. At that moment, she recalled his words about her being able to ease his pain and wondered if her magic flowing into him was helping him recover. After all, earlier, when he touched her, his magic grew stronger, even though she still believed that he was going to stand in the way of her dream, and that if she stayed there, he would keep holding her so she couldn't escape. Nevertheless, she decided to stay by his side just that once until his body recovered. We all know at this point that the just that once part is a big fat lie, right? Of course, she didn't forget that they were staying in such an embarrassing position, although there was nothing she could do about it for the time being. Sometime later, Elime woke up in his bed and wondered how he had ended up there. He then noticed that his depleted magic had been restored. Moreover, he also felt a certain warmth flowing through him. At that moment, he recalled Sela's words about staying with him until he recovered and wondered where she was. Right after, Russell came in and was elated after seeing that the Admiral had finally awakened. However, Elime ignored his aide's reaction and asked him if Miss Sela was still at the hotel, which made the other feel uncomfortable. Russell recalled the moment when he saw the Admiral in his siren form and asked Sela if that was her doing. However, she didn't reply and only confirmed that the aide already knew the Admiral's secret. In the end, she told him that Elime was in the bathroom and that he should check on him. Immediately thereafter, he quickly ran to check on the Admiral, and that was the last time Russell saw Sela. Unfortunately, at that moment, our protagonist had already left the hotel. The aide believed that she should have slipped out of the hotel, and because of all the chaos, he couldn't stop her. Okay, she truly meant it when she said it would be just that once. I'll give her that. Russell immediately apologized, but the other yelled at him, asking how much time had passed, to which the aide replied that it had been a week since he had collapsed. That shocked the Admiral, but luckily, Russell was not finished and added that they had tracked Miss Sela after the incident, which was why they knew that, 2 days prior, she had boarded a passenger ship bound for Matlana. Moreover, they had confirmed her destination from a notebook she had left behind. The notebook was filled with notes about Matlana's coastlines, geography, and real estate prices. In fact, she had even moved out of her old apartment, which meant that she intended to settle there. After hearing that, the Admiral recalled that Matlana was where his vacation villa was and wondered what the odds were for that coincidence. He then told Russell that Miss Sela was really not cut out for running away, before ordering him to immediately pursue the Matlana passenger ship. 3 days later, our protagonist was enjoying her trip while wondering where she should live. In fact, she had already made a choice. She believed that a certain secluded house in the Leia forest looked perfect. However, she wanted to know what something called Seakeeper was. She was reading an interesting job offer. Someone was recruiting a new seakeeper who would be offered a cheap house by the sea. Moreover, the requirements for that position were 2. 1. The person should love the sea, and 2. The applicant should maintain clean waters as the new keeper of the coast. After reading the details, she couldn't help but find some parallelism between that job description and what Hagrid did at Hogwarts in the Harry Potter novels. She truly thought that it was a good offer, but if Elime showed up again soon, she wouldn't have time to pick leisurely. At that moment, she was already aware of the fact that she had left her notebook behind, which meant that he was bound to know she was going to Matlana. So hiding in Matlana was the priority. In fact, she had already decided to swim for it if Elime caught up to the passenger ship. Wow, this protagonist is literally trying to run away from the plot, which is kind of funny, I guess. Nevertheless, if the Admiral still managed to find her, even after she hid in Matlana, she would be willing to negotiate. After all, he owed her, so at least he should listen to what she had to say. At that moment, she realized that the ship was not moving, and some people inside said that a battleship was going to conduct an inspection. Of course, that put her on alert and also shocked her because she hadn't expected that they would catch up with the ship that fast. Shortly after, she went to see the battleship and quickly confirmed that it was a real siren warship. That astonished her because she couldn't believe that a massive thing had come that close without a sound. Right after, she managed to see Elime and couldn't help but smile after confirming that he looked perfectly fine. Nevertheless, she also realized that if he was there, it was time for that swimming time she had visualized. She couldn't believe that she had to go straight to the swimming to escape solution, but she knew that she had to dive into the sea right away. Sadly, she also knew that Elime still had a reputation to uphold, which meant that, in front of those people, jumping into the sea wouldn't be easy. And yes, you guessed it, he quickly interrupted her thoughts by jumping from his warship to the passenger ship, which completely shocked her. She couldn't believe he had really done that and wondered if he had lost his mind. Still, she didn't hesitate and took off her dress, revealing her diving suit, Mott, and got ready to jump into the sea. He quickly noticed her intention and yelled at her, asking her to stop, but she promptly replied that she wouldn't before jumping into the sea. It was then Elime's turn to wonder if she was insane, since he couldn't believe that she had really jumped into the sea. However, at that moment, he realized two things. 1, he had been too hasty. 2, he wasn't behaving like himself. Even with a warship, it took at least 2 hours to reach Matlana from there. Moreover, traveling barehanded, he didn't know what dangers might arise. In the end, he had put Sella in danger because he had pushed her too much. If he had approached more slowly, she wouldn't have dived in so recklessly. At that moment, Russell asked him what he was going to do, and he told his aide that he would leave that place to him. Almost immediately, he also jumped into the sea, while the aide complained about being left behind like that. Still, there was nothing he could do. The Admiral had gone after that woman, and he had even begun to think of it as an elopement, which made him feel more restless because, at that rate, it would turn into a messy scandal. Meanwhile, our protagonist was diving while feeling happy because she was free and could head to Matlana while enjoying the ocean view. However, shortly after, she noticed that the fish were moving strangely and wondered if something had happened. Yes, it is called the plot. She then turned her head back and saw a whirlpool underwater, which surprised her, especially when she realized that behind it was Elime in his siren form. She couldn't believe that he had abandoned his warship, even as an admiral. At that moment, she noticed something else. It seemed like he was sending her telepathy. He told her that it was too dangerous to go to Matlana like that. Right after, he created an energy shield around her, and she began to panic because she couldn't get out. Sella began to hit the walls of the energy sphere, and he quickly told her that it was dangerous to hit it like that. Hearing his voice pissed her off, and she yelled at him, demanding that he release her from that thing. Before he could reply, she yelled at him that she had kept his secret, and nursed him back to health, but he had chased her down, scared her, and trapped her with magic. She couldn't believe that was how she repaid the person who had helped him. He quickly apologized and told her that he had no excuse before adding that he was worried she might be in danger. Nevertheless, she cut him off and asked him if he was aware that what he was doing was a crime. After all, he was abusing his authority, had spied on her, and was trying to kidnap her. At that moment, several dolphins appeared and surrounded her, and she began to wonder why the dolphins were doing that. Right after, she asked him if he had summoned them, and he denied it. Still, she couldn't help but feel less angry after seeing them since they were so cute. She then noticed a white dolphin at the back and wondered if it was an albino. She also noticed that it was lagging behind the pod and that the net it had on its tail had cut deep into the skin. With just one look, she realized that the wound looked bad. Elime then removed the barrier and told her that the little dolphin would need help before it fell too far behind, and since she had a knife, he wanted her to help it. After hearing his request, she blushed and smiled at him before replying that she could handle that much and that she could leave it to her. Almost immediately, she removed the net from the little dolphin, and she was surprised after seeing it remaining calm, especially because she knew that the salt water would sting the wound. Right after, Elime touched the little dolphin's head with his own, as if comforting it. And while she was seeing that scene, Sella thought that they said people who were good to animals were not bad people. However, she wondered why he was only a villain to him, trying to ruin her dream. He then told her that the dolphin said it was grateful, and almost immediately, she hugged it while smiling happily at the little fella. Sadly, Elaine interrupted them, saying that it was time to send it back to the pod. After hearing that, she said that she really hated parting with the dolphin because she believed that it was cute. However, she knew that being albino made it stand out too much, which meant that if it strayed, it would be in danger. She then bid farewell to the dolphin, which ended up leaving despite feeling sad. In fact, it was not the only one who felt that way. Our protagonist was crying while seeing the albino getting away from her. Suddenly, she got serious and asked him why he had remained quiet, but she ignored her question and instead asked her if she would allow him the chance to set things right. At that moment, she recalled her own plan, specifically the part where she would negotiate with him in the scenario that he insisted on chasing her no matter what. Furthermore, as it happened, she had the upper hand. So she quickly reminded him that he owed her 2 debts, before adding that she would wipe away the debt of you harassing her if he erased the losses the sirens had suffered because of him. As for the remaining debt, she wanted to buy a secluded house in Matlana, so she wanted him to help her with that. After hearing that, he told her that she had said her dream was to live freely by the sea, before asking her if that was because Matlana's waters were very clean. She quickly confirmed it and added that she could also see a lot of marine life there. Shortly after, he accepted her proposal, but she quickly asked him how she could trust his word. After all, it could just be a lie. So they needed a contract. After hearing that, he told her that first he should earn her trust, which was why he would use the oath of word magic. Once he finished his oath, he felt a deep pain, and our protagonist quickly asked him what he had done to his heart. However, he ignored her question and instead asked her if she finally trusted him. As for Sella, she just couldn't understand why he would go that far and why a person had to be that extreme. She even wondered if there was no middle ground with him, and what kind of person was like that. 1 hour later, both were sitting in front of each other in a room within Elimi's warship. At that moment, the admiral told her that before writing the contract, he needed to know where she planned on staying in Matlana. That put her on alert, and she asked him if she wanted to know it, so he could keep her under surveillance. Right after, he explained to her that she knew her secret and she could use magic, so if that got out to the world, not only the Siren family, but she as well would be in danger. So, in short, he wanted her to become someone of the Siren household so he could protect her. After all, as he had sworn, he intended to help her achieve her dream. She could live freely in any part of Matlana, and she didn't even need to work for the Siren family. She just needed to stay by his side. After hearing that, she thought that it sounded pretty good. In her opinion, it was like a dream job where you got benefits without working. Still, she was aware that there should be a condition, so she asked him if he was planning to assign her a watcher, and he immediately confirmed it. Almost immediately, she got serious and told him that she would never tell anyone about his magic or his identity as Admiral, before asking him if he could call off the Watcher. She then thought that if she wanted to enjoy freedom, she needed to make that clear first. Nevertheless, he quickly asked her how he was supposed to believe that, and she immediately realized that he was using her own words against her because she had asked him that when they were underwater. Right after, he added that even if he wanted to trust her, a lifetime was a long time, and decades later, she might forget the promise and make a mistake. So, as the head of the house, he had to think about the future. After hearing his explanation, she knew that he had a point. Moreover, it was not that he didn't trust her, it was because many enemies were targeting the Siren family, so he was only being cautious. However, she didn't want to live being watched, so she began to wonder what to do since she still believed that there had to be a way. Almost immediately, she had an idea that would satisfy them both, and she quickly told him that she would use the oath spell of words. She still thought it was an extreme measure, but at that moment, that was exactly what was needed. So, before he could even reply, she began to cast the spell and make the oath while thinking that since she could use a little magic, it should be possible for her to replicate it. Unfortunately, for some reason, the spell didn't work, which bothered her a lot. In the end, mimicking the chant was not enough, despite how shocked the Admiral looked. It was like trying to copy a restaurant's dish without the proper recipe. Failing was only natural. However, it would be a different story if she learned the recipe directly from the restaurant. So she immediately asked him to teach her the magic, even if it was dangerous. Nevertheless, he warned her against it because it was a spell that could kill her if she messed up. Still, she insisted on it while pouting because he had already used it. However, he quickly explained to her that while she was a human, he was a siren. Nevertheless, she didn't back down and told him that she could stop her own heart with magic before ever spilling the secret, which meant that there would be no need for a watcher. In the end, that was better for her, and it would give the Admiral peace of mind. Still, she added that if there was a more certain method, she would follow that instead, even though she was pretty sure that there was no better way than that. Elime took a few seconds before replying, and when he did, he explained to her that to properly use the oath spell, she should expect it to take about a year, half a year at the earliest. That shocked her, because she didn't expect it would take that long, but she also knew that if she complained at that moment, she would lose. Our protagonist then smiled at him and replied that it was nothing for her. After all, she had thought that she would have to enroll in some magic academy. Still, he kept trying to burst her bubble by saying that since she was a human and not a siren, the chance of success was only about 10%. However, she replied that 10% was better than 0%, and he quickly added that even if she failed to learn the magic, he would stay by her side to protect her from danger. Nevertheless, she ignored that part and asked him to add a clause in the contract, saying that if she succeeded in the spell, he wouldn't monitor her, to which he finally agreed. He also admitted that her reason for buying a house and learning magic made sense before asking her if she already had a place in mind. She quickly replied that she had a few candidates, but first, she planned to check out the Forest of Leia. She then told him that she had heard there was someone called the Sea Keeper, who was looking for a successor, and he had said that he would sell the house to the successor at a low price. After hearing the name, Aleem seemed to recognize it, and she quickly asked him if he knew that house. Sela feared that the place was cheap because there was a problem with it. The problem is him. The Admiral knew that house very well, so well that he immediately thought that our protagonist was not very good at running away. Still, he told her nothing about that and simply said that if it was there, he could take her on a warship. Our protagonist quickly noticed that something was not right and wondered why his proposal sounded ominous and why he was smiling so suspiciously. Sometime later, they finally arrived at Matlana, and Sela was elated since she believed that the sea there was bluer than the sky. Moreover, there was dazzling sunlight, white sandy beaches, water so clear you could see right through it, and even sea creatures that were rarely seen. She then noticed that the dolphins she had seen earlier were also there and began to greet them. However, that didn't catch the fish's attention. At that moment, the Admiral arrived and asked her if she liked Matlana that much, to which she replied that it was the place she had dreamed of, while thinking that the place was truly beautiful and that it was the Matlana she had dreamed of for so long. In fact, she began to cry out of happiness while yelling that she could finally live there. She then thought that Elime would pay for the house, and she would cover living expenses with the compensation from Duke Herbert. At that moment, our protagonist was showing a cunning expression while thinking that she could live her whole life off unearned income. In fact, she believed that even millionaires would envy her. Suddenly, she noticed a big manor that was nearby and was overwhelmed while thinking that it was going to be her home, and what kind of person was that sea keeper? After all, the house was several times bigger than what she had imagined. Moreover, right in front, there was a beautifully kept emerald sea. There was a land where she could make a garden, and there was even a dock. Sure, the house was a little big, but she loved everything about it. So, in the end, she decided that she would live there. After all, there were even dolphin neighbors. At that moment, she noticed something and asked what was located next to her house, and it was then that Russell dropped the nuke by telling her that she had mistaken the Admiral's villa for her house. That shocked our protagonist, and Aleem didn't miss the chance to laugh to his heart's content while teasing her. Even Russell couldn't help but tease her a little too. Right after, she began to enter a denial phase because she refused to believe that what they had told her was true. Moreover, she couldn't understand why the Admiral always got in her way. A very disturbed Sela asked Elime if that villa was really his, to which a very pleased Elime replied that if she meant that huge mansion nearby, that was his villa, which shocked her even more. Our protagonist then began to feel how her dream began to crumble. The picture-perfect sandy beach and the emerald sea, the adorable dolphin neighbors, everything was just amazing, but everything was just being torn into pieces. Still, she believed that she should live there because it was such a perfect place. Right after, she asked him about that little house next to the villa, and he told her that it was the home of the seakeeper she would be living in. At first, she was shocked for the third time in a row, but very quickly, she realized that the size of the house was actually perfect for living alone. She even thought that if she decorated it in a Mediterranean style, it would look stunning. So she immediately tried to calm herself down, because since that was going to be her house, she needed to make a careful decision. Shortly after, she asked him what exactly a seakeeper did, and he explained that they were caretakers who managed the water quality and marine ecosystem in front of the villa. After hearing the explanation, she thought that it actually sounded like it suited her. After all, he was a marine biology student in her past life, so she was confident she would do great. At that moment, the Admiral asked her if she would like to take a look inside the cabin once they docked, to which she immediately replied that she would like to. 30 minutes later, she was elated while inspecting every place inside the house. After all, in her opinion, the inside of the cabin was truly amazing. Even the study was full of books about the ocean. To her, that place was like a treasure trove. It was then that she decided that she should become the Seakeeper's successor, while both Alimi and Russell noticed that she was fired up. Back with our protagonist, she thought that she could gain even more knowledge about marine life that way, even if that meant becoming Alime's neighbor. After all, since he only stayed there once every 3 years, seeing him once in a while should be fine. She then told the admiral that she loved both the seakeeper's job and the house before asking him when she could meet the seakeeper. Almost immediately, he replied that it would probably be the following day, while wondering if getting that job and living in that house was really something to be that happy about. Sella was so excited at that moment that she somehow began to shine, and both Russell and Emi couldn't help but cover their eyes while thinking that she looked very dazzling. Back with our protagonist, she thought that she would definitely become the seakeeper. She even began to visualize herself living in her dream house by the sea. She was so happy that she quickly asked Elime if he would let her stay at his villa that night, while thinking that the villa also looked amazing. Right after, the admiral agreed, while Russell thought that our protagonist was incredible in so many ways. Sometime later, while he was holding a piece of paper, he wondered out loud if she was really thinking of becoming a seakeeper. At that moment, he thought that she looked really happy. Up to that moment, she was always very tense and wary whenever she faced him. So, that was the first time he saw her wear such a glad expression, and that pleased him. At that moment, Russell told him that with Miss Sella's personality, if she disliked the position, she would have already left, just like when she tried to escape by jumping off the passenger ship. Unfortunately, Alim realized at that point that what she disliked was him. After all, every time they met, she acted like she was fleeing from some villain. Well, don't blame her, blame the author of the novel. Right after, Russell told him, while adjusting his glasses, that Miss Sella was a blessing, which surprised the admiral because it had come out of nowhere. The aide then explained that she had cured the admiral's headache in an instant, the one no one else could cure. After hearing that, Alim said that it was very rare for Russell to praise someone. At that moment, they were interrupted by an elated Sella who was literally greeting the ocean as loudly as she could, which shocked both men. Right after, Russell said that she would think of Miss Sella as the lucky otter that appeared at the admiral's villa. After hearing that, Elime sighed and smiled before replying that it seemed that there wouldn't be a dull moment while she was there. Sometime later, our protagonist was using her powers to dive and enjoy the underwater landscape while thinking that it was really beautiful. In her past life, those were hard to see because of pollution. Thus, seeing them like that was beyond anything she had imagined, which was why she was very touched at that moment. In fact, she still couldn't believe that she was really there in the Matlana she had always dreamed of. Still, her heart was already racing with all the things she wanted to do. She wanted to decorate the cabin in a Mediterranean style, and since she was at it, she would flex and buy some pretty furniture too. Furthermore, she was also curious about how different the sea there was compared to her past life. She was truly elated while thinking that she could see that beautiful sea every day. She was just very happy. At that moment, she noticed a spot where the corals were dead. Everywhere else looked fine, but that spot was different. She got closer and discovered that it was covered in seaweed, so her first assumption was that it might be a plague. Still, even if it was from another cause, it was a serious problem, so she would have to ask the seakeeper about it and find a solution. After all, she couldn't just leave that beautiful sea like that. She then decided that it was time to head back. When our protagonist emerged from the water, a very astonished maid informed her that the admiral had invited her to dinner. As for Sella, she wondered why the maid was looking at her like she was some kind of water ghost. However, she quickly dismissed that thought because dinner was more important at that moment since she was very hungry. Besides, she wanted to ask Elime about the seakeeper. Sometime later, she was having dinner with the admiral, who asked her if the food suited her taste. She then replied that, especially the seafood, it was insanely delicious. As for Elime, he thought that she was really eating well. He then informed her that the seakeeper was scheduled to arrive the following day at 8, which made her happy. Right after, she said that she would prepare to welcome him. In fact, she told herself that she would have to wake up early. Afterward, Alim told her that the seakeeper was the caretaker he had hired to manage the waters in front of the villa, and under the contract, if they quit the job, they should sell the cabin to their successor. He also added that he would recommend her as their successor, and with his recommendation, they would likely consider it favorably. After hearing that, she realized that even the seakeeper was someone Elime had hired, but since she had already decided to become one of the Siren family's people, it was fine. After all, thanks to her hard work, she had even gotten Elime's recommendation. She then asked him if she could trouble him with a request, before asking him to make sure to include in the letter that she truly loved the sea, and that she once rescued a fisherman from a sinking boat. After seeing our protagonist smiling so brightly at him, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed and ended up looking away. Sella noticed his reaction and asked him if there was something on her face, which he immediately denied. Right after, he told her that he would give the recommendation letter to the seakeeper the following day, and our protagonist told him that she was counting on him. Afterward, he asked her if she needed anything else while she was staying at the villa, and she replied by asking him if he could give her some paper and a fountain pen. After hearing her request, he told her that it was not hard to give her that, before asking her what he planned to use them for. Almost immediately, she told him that she had something important to write, before adding that it was something she absolutely needed in order to become the seakeeper. The current seakeeper of the Siren family, whose name was Johnny Bill, thought that it was a shame that there was no talent to properly manage the coast for the admiral. The middle-aged man was driving a cart and suddenly told the young man beside him that he was worried since he hadn't found a suitable successor. Right after, the young man, who was the current seakeeper's son, told his father that he should hand the work over to him instead of looking for a successor. After all, he would be better than some total stranger. However, the middle-aged man quickly dismissed his son's claims because the young man had gotten bored with just hearing about the work. Nevertheless, the young man didn't back down and said that since he had heard it so much, he would actually learn it faster. Still, the seakeeper dismissed his son's words again as nonsense because the young man had been fired from his job for gambling. However, the young man insisted by saying that since he had already lost one house to gambling, he would not gamble again. That was more than what the middle-aged man could take, and the seakeeper yelled at his son, asking him if he was bragging that he had lost the house he had bought him to gambling, before asking him how long he was going to freeload in his house. Right after, the young man, looking aggrieved, told his father that he didn't listen to a word he said. But before he could finish saying his idea, the young man suddenly shut up while looking at a certain point in the sea. Shortly after, he told his father that there was a person in the water, which shocked the seakeeper. The middle-aged man quickly said that someone had died, and he even guessed that it looked like a nearby ship had sunk. Right after, he told his son that they would have to recover the body before asking him to lend a hand, which surprised the young man. However, the seakeeper ignored his reaction and explained that since it was a drowned corpse, they should move it carefully, before asking him to go fetch a net from the hut's storeroom. However, the young man told his father that they should just leave the corpse because it would just sink into the sea anyway. That made the middle-aged man furious, and he told his son that returning the body to the bereaved was also the duty of a seakeeper. Nevertheless, the young man said that he couldn't do it. It was then that our protagonist decided to leave the water, which stunned the seakeeper's son, since he believed that the corpse was moving. Right after, she smiled at them before greeting them. Shortly after, the young man more or less got what she was doing and wondered out loud if that girl was insane, before asking why she was doing that so early in the morning. Even Johnny was startled because it was the first time he had seen a woman swimming in the sea at dawn. However, the seakeeper didn't fail to notice that the girl truly loved the sea, considering how cheerful she looked. At that moment, some sailors bid her farewell while calling her hero of the fishermen, which embarrassed her a lot. That surprised the seakeeper, and to strike while the iron was hot, Russell, who appeared at that moment, immediately added that our protagonist was their sea-crazed lucky charm. After hearing the aide's words, the seakeeper got flustered, but he still managed to ask the other what he meant by lucky charm, to which Russell replied that if the middle-aged man looked at the admiral's letter of recommendation, he would understand. The aide then gave the seakeeper a letter, and the middle-aged man was surprised by the fact that Elime had indeed written a recommendation letter for our protagonist. As for Tsella, she was smiling and greeting Elime, who was looking at her from a window. Sometime later, our protagonist introduced herself to the seakeeper, while the middle-aged man's son couldn't believe that his father was really thinking of accepting that girl as his successor. After all, the work was too rough for a woman to handle. The work is too rough for that stupid young man to handle. Did I say that out loud? Obviously, our protagonist didn't like to hear that at all, and wondered what was with that smug-looking kid. In fact, she wanted him to stop butting in for no reason. Right after, the young man couldn't take it anymore and yelled that the girl was crazy. Then, it was the middle-aged man's turn to snap, and he yelled at his son, ordering him to leave the place immediately. The young man didn't have a choice but to leave, but he still looked at Tsella very intently, as if wishing to attack her with some eye laser beams, an ability he obviously didn't possess. In fact, after seeing his reaction, Tsella mentally mocked him. The seakeeper then said that he should have driven him out long before, and right after he apologized to our protagonist in place of his useless son. Afterward, he introduced himself, and Tsella quickly replied that since she had much to learn, she would call him Teacher Johnny. He then asked her if she knew what the seakeeper's job was, and she quickly replied that it was to preserve and study the marine ecosystem of the coast by the villa. That detail was not in the papers, but she decided that it was time to use that method from her university days. The first phase of her strategy was to praise the middle-aged man's achievements. So she told him that she had seen the wide collection of books in his study, before adding that there were many organized works on shellfish and fish by depth. In fact, they were so meticulously researched that she was impressed. After hearing that, Johnny replied that it had been a while since he had last researched, so those records should be old. Still, she was the first to show such genuine interest in them, which ended up making him feel embarrassed. The seakeeper then asked her how she had found the study. After seeing the man's reaction, Tsella confirmed that everything was going as planned, since the seakeeper loved recognition of his achievements. Still, she was aware that she couldn't just give random compliments. Right after, she told him that it was full of hard-to-find marine knowledge, which made her think that it was like a treasure trove. The second phase of her strategy was to show curiosity, so she added that since it was his direct research, the accuracy was high and the knowledge valuable. Then, it was time to use her secret weapon, and almost immediately, she gave him a research report and asked him to take a look at it, which shocked the middle-aged man. That was phase 3 of her strategy, to show passion. After all, a professor type valued passion for learning most. Our protagonist then explained to Johnny that using the marine habitat map he had made 3 years before, she had checked what changes occurred in the current year. It was then that it hit him, and he asked her if the reason she was in the sea when they found her was related to that, to which she replied that she had gone out early in the morning, finished the survey, and then wrote the report. Afterward, she had extra time, so she was just resting by the time they found her. After hearing that, the seakeeper finally understood why she looked like a corpse back then. Sella continued her explanation by saying that the results showed that some habitats had shifted, and Johnny replied that he had noted it in the report too, before adding that her writing method was very systematic. He even asked her where she had learned to write like that, and she replied that from reading a lot of books. After all, she couldn't really say that she had learned it at the university. The middle-aged man then said that he hadn't been able to afford the academy either, so he had taught himself. Johnny continued by saying that before becoming a seakeeper, he had worked as a porter at the docks, spending free time in the library. It had been tough, but he enjoyed it. Then, he asked her if she had also worked on a passenger ship before. After hearing the question, she immediately thought that she indeed had, both before and after reincarnating. She had worked in jobs related to the sea and studied hard. Right after, she laughed and said that when there were no passengers, she read books during breaks. She also added that sometimes she got so absorbed that she didn't notice customers boarding. Johnny also said that he was so absorbed in a book that he even broke a barrel of rum he was carrying, which made her laugh while asking him what had happened to his pay that day. Then, he replied that he hadn't gotten it. At that point, our protagonist thought that the conversation was flowing smoothly, which looked like a good sign for the interview. In fact, she began to believe that she truly had great chances of becoming the successor. Afterward, the seakeeper told her that the recommendation said that she had saved several people from the sea. According to the letter, she had jumped into the ocean to rescue a woman in distress and even saved a fisherman from a sinking boat. So, he had to admit that for someone so young, she was truly courageous and that an incredible person had arrived to succeed him. She immediately smiled after hearing that because he had basically told her that she was hired. However, it would not be so easy. He told her that, if it were up to him, he would like her to be his successor immediately. The seakeeper then told her that the idea was for her to learn the work slowly and see if it suited her. After all, once you became a seakeeper, it was not easy to quit. Still, she truly thought that she would be chosen that day, but she also understood his reasoning and ended up thinking that it was wise to be cautious. In the end, selecting the wrong successor could ruin the sea he had cared for. Moreover, if she thought of it as an internship, it was not so bad. Right after, she said that she would do it, and he told her that they would sign the contract after the probation ended, before asking her if she had any other questions. She then asked if she might read the materials in his study during the probation, and he replied that as long as she didn't take them outside, she might read any time. Afterward, Sella said there was one more thing she wanted to ask, and told him about the dead corals before asking him why they were dying. After hearing that, he got serious and told her that, for that explanation, they should move. Sometime later, he said that something terrible had happened to that beautiful sea not long before. Normally, wastewater was collected and sent to a treatment plant outside the forest, but the villa's master dumped it into the sea to cut costs. In short, he was embezzling. In fact, Johnny told her that he was currently in prison, but aside from the wastewater's fees, he had been pocketing much more, and the seakeeper didn't even notice. Worse yet, even though no more waste was being dumped, the coral colonies kept dying, and they didn't know why. The middle-aged man added that the admiral knew of that too. However, Johnny knew that preventing such disasters was his duty, and he had failed. Nevertheless, Aleem hadn't dismissed him, so Johnny wanted to revive the coral colonies to repay that kindness. After hearing that, our protagonist felt relieved because at least it was not an epidemic. Treating diseased coral was nearly impossible, but if domestic wastewater was the cause, then there was still a way to protect the remaining coral. Almost immediately, she asked him to entrust that matter to her, which surprised him. She then told him that, as the next seakeeper, she would see that through, and right after, she asked him to trust her. Sometime later, she was looking at some plants and concluded that they looked just like seaweed. Right after, she asked Johnny what the name of the seaweed was, which startled the middle-aged man so much that she wondered why he was acting like that. He then replied that it was called Johnny's hair, which confused her. Right after, Sella asked what about the seaweed nearby, and he replied that it was called Johnny's eyebrows, which confused her more. In fact, she couldn't take it anymore, and asked him why all the names were like that. The seakeeper then replied, while looking embarrassed, that those seaweeds were such a nuisance that nobody bothered to name them. In the end, he was the first one to give them names. After hearing that, she thought that his eyebrows and hair were kind of gross, But before she could think of anything else, he asked her why she was suddenly asking the names of the seaweed, to which she replied that she had already figured out why the corals were dying, which shocked the man. She then explained that the cause was eutrophication, leading to seaweed overgrowth. Eutrophication occurred when nutrients were overly abundant and wastewater had been dumped there, raising nutrient levels. That surprised Johnny, who immediately asked if wastewater counted as nutrients. Right after, Sella replied that, just like farmers used fertilizer for crops, what was waste to us became vital nutrients for seaweed. After hearing that explanation, Johnny asked her why the corals were dying if the seaweed thrived on those nutrients. After all, corals should thrive as well. Our protagonist then said that his question was a good one, before explaining that both corals and seaweed relied on sunlight for energy and released oxygen. However, corals were very sensitive to the oxygen concentration in seawater. So, as seaweed spread, oxygen levels spiked, and that became toxic for the corals. After hearing that, he quickly guessed that to save the corals, they just needed to clear out all of Johnny's eyebrows. Sella immediately confirmed it and added that once oxygen levels stabilized, the corals would recover. Johnny then asked where on earth she had picked up such knowledge, since he would love to learn too. Right after, she replied that it had been thanks to tidbits she had picked up while working as a waitress. After all, she couldn't reveal that she had studied at the university. She also said that she had just thought of a way to deal with the seaweed. He immediately asked her what way, and she replied that they should eat it, which shocked him. Sometime later, Johnny's son met with his father and asked him if it was true that he was appointing our protagonist as his successor. The middle-aged man then confirmed it, before adding that he would formalize the contract in a week. That pissed the young man a lot, and he told his father that there was no way that she had saved lives more than once, since she was just a mere waitress. To Johnny's son, those stories were all lies. However, the seakeeper cut him off by saying that even the admiral knew, which was why he should stop spouting nonsense and leave. Nevertheless, he insisted on proving his point by saying that, with such extraordinary physical ability, it was strange she was just a seakeeper. After all, it would make more sense if she used her talents for something more profitable. Furthermore, according to the young man, suspicious rumors were going around that she was a spy sent by another family. They also said that the admiral had even lent her a villa and dined with her, which clearly showed that she should have seduced him to win his favor, all to uncover the admiral's weakness. Those words finally reached the seakeeper, who thought it was strange for the admiral, who always dined alone, to have a meal with our protagonist. At that moment, Sella arrived and told Johnny that she had harvested a lot of Johnny's eyebrows. That surprised the seakeeper and showed him that she had worked hard. Right after, Sella said that she could cook plenty and asked them if they would like to try some at that moment. However, the young man felt disgusted by simply imagining eating that, and after seeing his son's reaction and what she had done, the middle-aged man concluded that his son had just heard nonsense. He simply couldn't believe that she was a spy. She was just an eccentric girl, nothing more. Sometime later, she tasted the seaweed and thought that it tasted just like gim. In fact, it tasted just like the most expensive kind, gopchang gim. On the other hand, after seeing her eating the seaweed, Johnny asked her if it was really safe, before adding that if she felt unwell, she should tell him immediately. However, she simply replied that it was very tasty before offering some. Nevertheless, he quickly refused. At that moment, our protagonist thought that in her past life, seaweed was only a delicacy in Korea and East Asia, which was why she really wanted to let him taste that delicious gim somehow. Right after, she got an idea and decided that she would dry it and make seasoned gim. That way, the fishy taste would be reduced, it would be easy to eat, and it would be convenient for long-term storage. So, once they were finished, she would serve it to the seakeeper. She then asked for the middle-aged man's help because she needed some supplies to dry Johnny's eyebrows in the sun. That way began the traditional homemade gim making, which consisted of 3 steps. Step 1, place a clean picture frame on the drying rack. Step 2, spread the seaweed thinly inside the frame. Step 3, dry it for 5 hours. Shortly after, our protagonist thought that in just a few more hours, it would be delicious gim. Moreover, she still wanted to serve teacher Johnny a tasty meal, and also, there was one more person she owed. At that moment, she admitted that even though Elime used to torment her, she currently didn't resent him at all. After all, without him, she could never have had that opportunity. So since there would be plenty of gim left, she decided to make a dish for the admiral too, as a gesture of thanks. Afterward, she told Johnny that she would go rest by the sea for a bit. That caught the seakeeper's attention, who immediately asked her why she didn't rest inside the house, to which she replied that playing in the sea was her way of resting. While our protagonist was running toward the sea, the middle-aged man couldn't help but think that she was a peculiar young lady. Meanwhile, the admiral was writing a letter while thinking about how he should tell something to his mother. She had been traveling the world, searching for a cure to his illness, but sadly, she hadn't found one yet. Furthermore, the guilt of burdening her weighed heavily on him, and he truly wanted to know if there was really a cure somewhere in that world. In the end, he wished her mother would finally live her own life. At that moment, he decided that he should tell her to stop searching because, thanks to our protagonist, his condition had improved greatly. Of course, he was aware that his mother wouldn't easily believe that a disease of more than 20 years had suddenly improved. So, to persuade his mother, he would have to tell her about Miss Sella. Nevertheless, he knew that if the siren family got involved, our protagonist might be dragged into danger, which was why he wasn't sure about how much he should reveal. At that moment, he saw her in the sea and told himself that she had gone there again. That was the 4th time that day, and he began to think that she would fall ill at that rate. Right after, he began to wonder if she truly loved the sea that much, before thinking that just watching her felt like the refreshing scent of lemon. At that moment, he was pulled out of his reverie by Russell. The aide told him that he had knocked several times, but the Admiral didn't answer. Right after, Russell asked Alimi what she was staring at so intently, and the Admiral refused to reveal it. Nevertheless, the aide made a guess and asked the Admiral if she was looking at the seaweed that the lucky girl had dried, which surprised Alimi. Russell then explained to Alimi, while showing him where she was drying the seaweed, that Sella had said that she would cook with it. And after hearing the explanation, the Admiral had to admit that she was truly unpredictable. The aide then added that because of what she was doing, the servants were casting disapproving looks because our protagonist was an outsider, and her behavior stood out too much. Why don't they just mind their own business? Are their lives that boring? Did I say that out loud again? Alimi then said that it sounded like hazing and ordered Russell to tell the servants that he was Miss Sella's patron. Russell immediately obeyed, but at that moment, Alime noticed that there was a strange man at the hut, before asking who the man was. Ding ding ding, we have a winner. That piece of garbage is finding new ways to be more disgusting. Immediately thereafter, the Admiral took out his gun, but the aide quickly told him to wait before saying that the young man was the son of the seakeeper. Alime then asked why he was still there, and almost instantly they both concluded that the young man's behavior was suspicious. However, when Russell whispered that it was unacceptable for the young man to approach the Admiral's treasure, Alime had to admit that he had no idea of what the other meant by it. Still, the Admiral said that he had a bad feeling about that and ordered his aide to put someone on the young man.